Purity of heart. It sounds simple, but it is one of the most difficult things to find. We live in a world full of masks, people hiding behind appearances, pretending, polishing the outside while the inside remains broken. But Jesus pierced through all of this when he said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." To be pure in heart is not about being flawless or perfect. It is about being honest before God. It means having a heart that is not divided, not torn between selfish desires and holy love. It is the difference between a river that runs clear and one polluted by many streams of dirt. Purity of heart is a single-minded devotion, a heart that truly wants God above all else. For those sitting on the hillside, this must have sounded almost impossible. They had grown up surrounded by religious traditions that focused on outward actions, rituals, rules, and appearances. But Jesus was not impressed by clean hands if the heart was still dirty. He was not moved by empty words or fake devotion. He looked deeper, straight into the soul, and his promise? They shall see God. This is breathtaking. To see God is not just about heaven someday. It begins now. The pure in heart catch glimpses of him in the beauty of creation, in the kindness of a stranger, in the quiet whisper of prayer. They see his fingerprints where others see only chance. They experience his presence in ways the distracted, divided heart cannot. But there is also a future promise. A day when those who are pure in heart will see God face to face. Not hidden, not distant, but close, clear, and eternal. This is the ultimate blessing, intimacy with the Creator himself. The world says, chase pleasure, chase status, chase success. Jesus says, chase purity of heart, and you will see God. Purity may not impress people, but it opens the eyes of the soul, and when your vision clears, you begin to see what truly matters. Not just the shadows of life, but the light of heaven breaking through. On that mountain, the people must have felt both challenged and inspired. Could it be true that God was not looking for the loudest, the richest, or the most religious, but for the heart made pure by love? And even today, his words still invite us. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. The crowd on the hillside might have leaned closer when Jesus spoke these words, because they were the hardest to hear. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven. Persecution is not the blessing we want. No one longs to be mocked, rejected, or hated. And yet Jesus tells us that when the world pushes back against us because we live for him, it is a sign that we belong to his kingdom. The blessing is not in the pain itself. It is in what the pain proves, that we are walking the narrow road of truth. Imagine the shock in the listeners' hearts. Many of them already knew suffering. Some had lost jobs because of their faith. Some had been rejected by family. Others feared Roman soldiers who crushed anyone who dared to resist. Yet here was Jesus, saying that their suffering was not wasted. It was holy. It was the mark of belonging to the kingdom of heaven. Persecution tests the heart. It asks, will you stand firm when faith costs you something? Will you stay true when following Jesus brings insults instead of applause? The world may see weakness, but heaven sees victory. For every insult, every rejection, every wound inflicted for righteousness' sake, there is a reward greater than anything this world can give. Jesus even tells them to rejoice, not because the pain feels good, but because their eyes should look beyond it. Rejoice because heaven is near. Rejoice because they are standing in the same stream of suffering that the prophets once stood in. Rejoice because persecution does not mean God has abandoned them. It means he is closer than ever. This final beatitude ties them all together. The poor in spirit, the meek, the merciful, the pure in heart. These are the ones the world misunderstands, mocks, and often rejects. But in the kingdom of God, they are not forgotten. They are honored. They are blessed. They are promised a reward that will never fade. And so on that mountain, the last words of blessing rang out like a challenge. Will you choose the easy path that wins applause, or the harder path that may bring pain, but leads to eternal joy? The crowd had to decide that day, and we must decide still. Imagine standing on a quiet hillside. The crowd around you is silent, waiting. Then Jesus begins to speak, not about power, wealth, or success, but about blessings that sound upside down. He calls the poor, the mourners, the humble, and the peacemakers blessed. It feels shocking, almost backwards. But in these words, he reveals the heart of God's kingdom. The Sermon on the Mount begins with what we call the Beatitudes, 8 statements of blessing. They are not just nice sayings. They are a radical invitation to live differently. Picture the scene. Men and women have followed Jesus from towns and villages, hungry for hope. Many of them are ordinary people, farmers, fishermen, mothers, the sick, the poor. They are not powerful or famous. They are people searching for meaning, longing for peace, desperate for God. And Jesus begins with this: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." These words must have startled the listeners. In their world, being poor, whether in money or in spirit, was seen as weakness, even failure. Yet Jesus flips the idea upside down. He is saying, the kingdom of heaven does not belong to the proud, the self-sufficient, or the powerful. It belongs to those who know their need for God. Being poor in spirit does not mean walking around in misery. It means recognizing we cannot save ourselves. It is the humble heart that admits, I need God's help. I cannot do life alone. And it is here, in that place of dependence, that Jesus promises the greatest gift, the kingdom of heaven. Not tomorrow, not someday far away, but starting now. This is the first step in his message. Before we can enter God's kingdom, we must lay down pride and accept our need. It is not about what we can achieve, but about receiving what only God can give. To the world, this may sound foolish, but to those who listened on that hillside, it was the beginning of a new kind of hope. Tears often feel like weakness. In our world, we are taught to hide them, to stay strong, to pretend nothing is wrong. But when Jesus looked at the crowd, he spoke words that cut through the silence. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. At first, these words sound confusing. How can sadness be a blessing? How can mourning bring anything good? But Jesus was not speaking about shallow feelings. He was pointing to something deeper. Mourning is not only about losing someone you love, it is also about grieving the brokenness of life itself. It is the cry of the heart that sees pain, injustice, and sin, and feels the weight of it. It is the honesty to admit that the world is not as it should be. Think of the people sitting at his feet. Some had lost children. Some lived under Roman oppression. Some carried guilt that kept them awake at night. They understood mourning in ways words cannot capture. Yet Jesus calls them blessed, not because the pain is good, but because God himself draws near to the brokenhearted. The comfort Jesus promises is not just a pat on the shoulder or empty words like, "It will be okay." His comfort is real. It is the healing presence of God that whispers hope in the middle of despair. It is the assurance that pain will not have the last word. And for those who trust him, there is a day coming when every tear will be wiped away. This blessing turns the world's logic upside down. The world says, avoid pain, cover your wounds, hide your grief. Jesus says, bring your sorrow to me, and I will meet you there. Your mourning is not wasted. It is the doorway to comfort, the place where God's love becomes more real than ever. On that hillside, people must have felt a flicker of hope. For the first time, their tears were not a mark of shame, but a sign that they were seen, known, and blessed by the kingdom of God, power. That is what most people wanted in the time of Jesus. Power to defeat Rome, power to rise above poverty, power to finally be respected. But then Jesus said something no one expected. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The word meek is often misunderstood. Many think it means weak, timid, or afraid. But meekness is not weakness. It is strength under control. Think of a mighty horse, strong enough to run wild, yet choosing to respond to the gentle touch of its master's hand. That is meekness, choosing humility instead of pride, patience instead of rage, gentleness instead of force. For the crowd on the hillside, this teaching turned everything upside down. In their world, the strong ruled, the wealthy dominated, and the meek were ignored. Yet Jesus declared that the meek, not the oppressors, not the warriors, not the loudest voices, would one day inherit the earth. He was speaking of a kingdom where the last would be first, and the forgotten would be lifted up. Meekness is not about letting people walk all over you. It is about refusing to let anger, bitterness, or pride control your life. It is the ability to stand firm with quiet strength, to love even when provoked, to trust God's justice instead of taking revenge into your own hands. In a world that celebrates self-promotion, meekness is a radical act of faith. And the promise? They shall inherit the earth, not by fighting for it, not by seizing it, but by receiving it as a gift from God. This inheritance is both present and future. It begins now in the peace that meekness brings to the heart, and it will be fulfilled fully when God renews the world. On that mountain, the words of Jesus painted a different vision of life, a vision where true greatness is not measured by how much power you hold over others, but by how willing you are to trust God and walk humbly. To the world, meekness looks small, but in the kingdom of God, meekness is the pathway to everything, hunger and thirst. These are not small feelings. They are desperate, powerful needs that push every human being to move, to search, to fight for survival. And on that hillside, many listening to Jesus knew hunger in their stomachs and thirst in their throats. But he spoke of a deeper kind of hunger, a hunger of the soul. He said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Righteousness is not about appearing holy or pretending to be better than others. It is about longing for the world to be set right. It is the cry for justice when we see oppression. It is the ache for purity when sin has stained our hearts. It is the hunger for God's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. This hunger cannot be satisfied with money, fame, or success. It is a deeper craving, one that only God Himself can fill. Imagine a dry land cracked by the sun, waiting for rain. That is the soul that longs for righteousness. Imagine a starving traveler who finally finds bread. That is the heart that seeks God's truth and is satisfied by His presence. The blessing is not only in the hunger, it is in the promise that God will answer. Jesus does not say, maybe. He says those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled. This filling is not temporary like food or drink. It is lasting, eternal. It is the peace that comes when a guilty heart is forgiven. It is the joy of knowing God sees every injustice and will one day make all things right. It is the quiet strength of a life anchored not in human approval, but in the approval of heaven. The world says, chase after comfort, chase after pleasure, chase after power. But Jesus says, chase after righteousness. And when you do, your hunger will not destroy you. It will transform you. For God Himself will satisfy your soul in ways nothing else ever can. On that mountain, these words must have felt like water to the thirsty and bread to the starving. And even now, for those who long for something more than what the world offers, the promise still stands. You shall be filled, mercy. A word that feels soft, almost fragile. But in truth, mercy is one of the strongest forces in the world. When Jesus looked into the eyes of the crowd and said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy," He was calling them into a radical way of living. Mercy is not just feeling sorry for someone. It is love in action. It is compassion that moves the heart and the hands. Mercy is when you see someone wounded and you do not walk away. Mercy is when you have the power to punish, but instead you forgive. Mercy is when you choose kindness over cruelty and grace over revenge. To the people listening that day, these words were shocking. Many of them lived under Roman rule, where mercy was rare and cruelty was normal. The strong crushed the weak. Justice was often twisted. Forgiveness was seen as foolish. And yet Jesus declared that the merciful, not the powerful, not the wealthy, not the proud, we're the ones truly blessed. Why? Because mercy reflects the heart of God. Every time we show mercy, we mirror Him. We become living examples of the forgiveness He offers us. And the promise is clear. Those who give mercy will receive mercy. This is not a transaction, but a truth. When mercy flows out of us, it opens the door for God's mercy to flow in. Think of it this way. The world says, get even. But Jesus says, forgive. The world says, protect yourself. But Jesus says, open your hands. The world says, show no weakness. But Jesus says, show mercy, and you will discover strength greater than vengeance. On that mountain, His words must have struck deep into hearts hardened by pain. Perhaps some in the crowd remembered enemies they hated, debts they refused to forgive, or wounds they carried. And yet Jesus was giving them a vision of freedom. A life not chained by bitterness, but released by mercy. And today, those words still echo. To be merciful is to live in rhythm with heaven itself. It is to walk through a broken world with open hands, knowing that the same mercy we give is the mercy we shall receive.